Hello everybody, we are approaching the topic skeletal muscle relaxants, right? So the skeletal muscle relaxant is directly linked with the skeletal muscle contractions. Can you remember already we have studied while at the beginning of this autonomic nervous system chapter, we classified the nervous system, right? Finally, we have classified as autonomic as well as somatic. So the somatic nervous system is a voluntary, right? The voluntary in nature. So it is directly connected to the skeletal muscle, right? Again, the somatic nervous system do not have any ganglia. We studied already. These things to be recalled. If you forgot those things, then again please have a look to revise that one, right? Again, the neurotransmitters that is secreted from this somatic nervous system. What is that? Acetylcholine, right? We studied. Now this acetylcholine will bind with the NM receptor, which is present in the skeletal muscle. After binding with the NM receptor, what it can lead to? It can lead to the muscle contraction, skeletal muscle contractions. This is the basic idea of this chapter. I mean, before studying this chapter, we should be again familiar. We need to look upon this kind of matter, right? These basic concepts we have to clear, right? So in this chapter, skeletal muscle relaxants, as you know by seeing the term skeletal muscle relaxants, that means what? These are the drugs which will relax the skeletal muscle, which will relax towards contraction, relaxation. It will relax the skeletal muscles, right? So in this chapter, we are going to study what is that skeletal muscle relaxants, classification of drugs, right? Mechanism of actions in pharmacology. Mechanism of action are very important. Okay, if we have different classes of drugs, we must have different mechanism of actions. Okay, again we'll be studying the therapeutic use of the drugs, why or where this kind of drugs can be used. Also the pharmacological actions, what are the actions of this kind of drugs in different organs. Pharmacological actions along with the adverse drug reactions. What are the side effects? Is there any contraindication? Is there any drug interactions? These things we'll be studying in this chapter, right? Okay, now let's begin. Before studying skeletal muscle relaxants, we must know one word. This is the muscle tone. I'm writing here muscle tone. T-O-N-E, tone. Muscle, you know what is a muscle? Tone means what? Muscle tone. Tone means the tension or kind of partial contraction or stretch. A stretch. Okay? This is what we call as the muscle tone. We must understand, if our muscle are at rest also, if we are at rest also, I'm sleeping at rest, you are sleeping at rest, you're not doing anything at rest, then also the muscles are having certain tension, then also the muscles are having certain stretching has to be there. Then only suddenly if you are waking up, you are not falling down. Okay? So doesn't matter whether you are sleeping, whether you are taking, at rest, your muscles must have a tone, a tension. Getting my points? So these are the drugs, skeletal muscle relaxants are the drugs which will decrease the muscle tone. that muscle tone will be decreased. Okay. In another words, what we say, your muscles will be relaxed. Now, as per the definition, if you see muscle tone, it is the continuous passive partial contractions. Continuous passive partial, not complete contractions. Okay, passive contractions. Now, what is the muscle contraction? Why we need the muscle contraction? See, I'm moving my hands this way. Whenever I want, I'm holding the pen, right? I'm walking. I'm moving from one part to the another part. How? This is by means of the muscle contraction only. My muscle is contracted. That is why my fingers are bending. That is why I can hold the pen. Getting my points? My muscles are contracted. That is why I can pull my hand upwards. If there is no muscle contraction, it will be this way. Now I am relaxed. I'm not doing anything. But the thing is that, you see, I'm relaxed. But then also I have a passive tension on my muscles. Then only I can stand. Otherwise, I'll be falling down. If I acquire active strength, then see, I can pull my hands upwards. Okay? So for your daily activity, for moving from one part to the another part, there has to be a skeletal muscle contractions. But does it mean there is only skeletal muscles are contracted? No sport muscles are contracted. Does it mean? No. Sport muscles are also contracted. Sorry. There has to be a smooth muscle contraction for the normal normal functioning of your body. Very good example, peristalsis, right? Contraction of the smooth muscle of your esophagus. Then only whatever bolus you'll be taking, जो भी खाते हो, it can move nicely and it will go out via anus. We have so many examples. This skeletal muscle relaxants can be of two types. Okay? Depending on the site where they are acting. Depending on the site. ये कहाँ पे जाके काम करता है उसको लेके, by depending on that one, it can be divided in two types. Here I have written, one is the peripherally acting, second one is the centrally acting. Central means what? Central nervous system. Central nervous system, brain and spinal cord. Okay? That means these drugs will act on the central nervous system. Peripherally acting means all the nerves apart from central nervous system. So in the peripheral part, these drugs will act. We got certain differences. What are the differences? Centrally acting skeletal muscle relaxants, as I told you, okay, it can act on the spinal cord, mainly on the brain. We can say CNS, in the CNS, central nervous system. But the peripherally acting skeletal muscle relaxants, it is mainly acting on the neuromuscular junctions. Now already we have studied what is that neuromuscular junctions, right? It is a junction in between the nerve as well as the skeletal muscle. Neuromuscular junctions. It is acting there only. But the centrally acting will act on the central nervous system. But in your syllabus, okay, first, according to your syllabus, first you have to study about the peripherally acting skeletal muscle relaxants. So this centrally acting skeletal muscle relaxants will be studying later on, where we'll be studying the drugs acting on central nervous system, so that you will not be confused. Okay, so this is we are not studying right now, right? But we have to understand what is the difference. Now, this centrally acting skeletal muscle relaxants are said as spasmolytics. Spasmolytics, spasmolytics, or sometimes it is said as antispasmodics also. Both are synonymous. Okay. Then, in case of this peripherally acting skeletal muscle relaxants, it is said as the neuromuscular blocking. I'll tell you why. It is said as the neuromuscular blocking, BLOCK blocking agents. Centrally acting, it is said as the spasmolytics. Peripherally acting, it is said as the neuromuscular blocking agents. Okay? Now you understand the difference where these two drugs are mainly act. Now here, suppose I am putting a line this way according to the increase in the muscle tone. Increase in the muscle tone. Here I am suppose putting any muscle tone. Here I am putting 0. Suppose here I am putting 0. Suppose here I am putting 10. Just to make you understand, and here I am putting 5. 0, 5, 10. Increase in the muscle tone, increase in the muscle tension. Muscle tension is increasing that way. Now here you see, as I told you in the beginning of this chapter, all the muscles must have a tone if you are at rest also. I told you this way. So I can assume, suppose you are at rest and this is your muscle tone 5. You are not doing anything, that is why you have a muscle tone. Or we can think this one in a different way also. Suppose this is the normal muscle tone we have. Maybe you are at rest, maybe you are walking or something within 5 to 7 or 3 to 7. That means in the middle we have the muscle tone. Sometimes what happens due to certain abnormal motor functions, that a very good example we have in case of this cerebral palsy disease, right? So here we have certain abnormal motor functions. What is happening? There is a sudden contraction of the muscle which is beyond normal. Okay, suppose the normal is, here I am writing, suppose the normal may be 3 to 7. Suppose the normal is 3 to 7 muscle contraction within range, the tone. Now if it is beyond 7, above 7, approaching 10, now there is an excess muscle contraction. Okay, and these muscle contractions will always acute with the pain. You have the pain. For example, we have abdominal cramps. We say very frequently abdominal cramp. Or in case of the sports person, those who are playing, those who are athletes, they are suffering from the thigh muscle, that cramp, muscle cramp. Okay, that lower limb muscles are getting cramped most of the times, excess muscle contractions. Getting my point? So it is a painful situation. So in this case, what is happening? The muscle tone is increasing beyond the normal. This is an example. 7 is an example. Increasing beyond the normal. Right? So in this case, we are acting this kind of spasmolytics, centrally acting muscle relaxants, or we are using this kind of spasmolytics. ठीक है? Also, it can be used in case of certain spastic situations, spastic conditions. S-P-A-S-T-I-C, spastic conditions. Spasm and spastic, both are not exactly similar. Spasm, abdominal cramp is a muscle spasm. Spasm with the painful condition. Muscle spasm means sudden contraction of the muscle with some certain twisting situations. The muscle will twist. Okay? But spasticity is a we can say excessive of the spasm. The muscles will become very tight and rigid this way. Suppose this is a normal. Sometimes you'll find the muscles are bending like anything. Suppose my high the fingers are bending like anything. Very stressful and a huge stress will be there, and the muscles will be rigid. Okay, muscles will be rigid. This kind of phenomena you can, as I told you, you can observe in case of the patients of this cerebral palsy. Right? Muscle flexor muscle. Here we have certain flexor muscles. The flexor muscles will stretch like anything, so that there is no normal movement of the muscles. An excessive tone will be there. Okay, so here what we can see, so this centrally acting muscle relaxants, these are used to bring down the excessive tone of the muscle to the normal one. Here I am writing, where to write, suppose here I am writing to bring down excessive tone to the normal tone. Excessive tone to the normal tone. Suppose this is the normal tone. Around 5, within 5, this is the normal tone. Right? Now what is the peripherally acting skeletal muscle relaxants, or what is the neuromuscular blocking agents? These are mainly used along with the anesthetics, along with the anesthesia. Okay? What it will do, if you use this kind of neuromuscular blocking agents, it will bring the normal muscle tone to 0. Here I am writing normal muscle tone to 0. That means the muscles will be paralyzed. The muscles will be paralyzed. Paralysis, muscle paralysis will be there. Why it is important? Okay? If you provide this kind of neuromuscular blocking agents along with the anesthesia, then what will happen? We got an advantage. Okay, the first advantage is there is always a need of less doses of anesthesia. Less doses of anesthesia means what? In case of the post-surgery conditions, the recovery will be very, very good. Recovery will be very fast. Okay, because anesthesia, you see, in the medical science we have a department for especially for anesthesia. Providing anesthesia is a very risky job. Okay, we got so many examples where the patient is not died of the particular disease, but it's just dead due to the anesthesia. Okay, or he may have certain recovery problems. He may develop another secondary conditions. So the medical professionals always want there is a decrease in the anesthesia. Your muscles are already paralyzed, already relaxed, muscle tone is already gone, right? So in this case, what will happen? If you give less doses of anesthesia, it will work perfect. Okay, so it is given as a adjuvant to the anesthesia. Okay, also sometimes it is given in case of the ventilation. Suppose any mechanical ventilation is required. Just think of this kind of the COVID-19 cases where there is artificial ventilation, mechanical ventilation. Okay, in this case, in case of the mechanical ventilation, your intercostal muscles has to be relaxed. Then only mechanically it can be ventilated. If your intercostal muscles are having any muscle tone, that time the mechanical ventilator could not work properly. Or sometimes what we say is intubation. Okay, inserting a endotracheal tube through your trachea. If your muscles are getting, these muscles are getting contracted, it is very difficult for the professionals to insert that one. So in this case, your muscles have to be relaxed. I mean, from the normal tone to the 0-1. Very important. From the normal tone to the 0-1, to bring it down, we are using this kind of peripherally acting muscle relaxants. To centrally acting, where when we are using, if your muscles are somewhat over tonic, or we can say hypertonic, the muscle contraction is beyond normal, it is a painful situation, right? So there we are using this kind of centrally acting muscle relaxants. So today we'll be studying only about this peripherally acting muscle relaxants, as well as or neuromuscular blocking agents. So this is the classification on your screen. You can see that muscle relaxants or skeletal muscle relaxants can be divided in non-depolarizing blockers as well as depolarizing blockers. And in case of this non-depolarizing blockers also, we have long acting, intermediate acting, as well as the short acting. Okay, and we have the depolarizing blockers. So coming to the first class, we have non-depolarizing blockers. Non-depolarizing blockers, right? So here the first drug we have this D-tubocurarine. Right? So it is obtained from the curare plant. In ancient times, this drug was used by the hunters to paralyze the animals for the hunting. Okay, but nowadays this drug is not used because we have so many synthetic drugs. This is naturally obtained. We have so many synthetic drugs, and we have certain advantages for this kind of drugs. Okay, okay. So non-depolarizing blockers, how it is acting, the pharmacology, the mechanism of action of this drugs. Okay, to understand the mechanism of actions, again you have to recall this one: presynaptic nerve, and here we have the skeletal muscle. This is what? Neuromuscular junctions. What is happening there? We have the NM receptors. Now there is a secretion of this acetylcholine, right? So this acetylcholine will bind with the receptor. Acetylcholine will bind with the receptors. Finally, what will happen? There is a depolarization out here. Yeah, there is a depolarization in that muscle and plate. This is what we call as a muscle and plate. Yeah, now the impulse will flow this way throughout the muscles, and there is a muscle contraction. Somatic nerve, normal phenomena. Okay, but one thing we must, in the last or previous chapters, although we are describing that NM receptor this way, if you take a look at the actual structure of NM receptor, you will find here we have a receptor. Along with this receptor, the sodium channels are attached. The sodium channels are attached. That means it is a, what kind of sodium channel it is? It is a ligand gated sodium channel. Can you remember we discussed earlier ligand gated ion channels, voltage gated ion channels? These two ion channels we discussed. Ligand gated ion channels, that means this ion channel will open whenever any ligand or any drug or any neurotransmitter will bind there. Or voltage gated sodium channel will be opening if there is a voltage differences, right? If there is a voltage differences, for example, in case of this neurohumoral transmissions, we have this voltage gated sodium channel, but here we have a ligand gated sodium channel. That means we can assume along with the receptor we have the sodium channels. Here we have the sodium channels. Here we have the sodium channels. So whenever the acetylcholine will bind here, whenever this acetylcholine will bind, acetylcholine can be considered as a ligand, or of course is a neurotransmitter. When it will bind here, the sodium channel will open. The sodium channel will open and there is a flow of sodium. Intracellular positive charge will be increased. This is what we call as the depolarization. This is what we call as the depolarization. Now, if there already we know if there is a depolarization, there is activation of something. I mean, to activate any impulse, to activate any work, there has to be a depolarization. Okay. Now, this depolarization will be there, and there is a muscle contraction. Now, just think of if we do not allow the acetylcholine to bind in this NM receptor. We are not allowing the acetylcholine to bind here. Okay? We are using an antagonist. What will happen? Suppose here we are using tubocurarine or any other drugs coming under this non-depolarizing blockers. Okay? So many drugs are there. Already we studied the classifications. Tubocurarine would be there. Then we have this, pancuronium. Then we have atracurium, right? Pancuronium, atracurium, these drugs will be there. So if we allow these drugs to bind here, it will work as an antagonist. Now whatever the acetylcholine will come, it cannot bind here. Okay? That means this D-tubocurarine is having, or this kind of drugs are having the affinity but do not have any kind of efficacy. We studied affinity, efficacy, right? That means it can bind with the receptor but it doesn't have any kind of action. That is why there is no opening of this sodium channel. Sodium channel will not be open. There is no influx of sodium, no increase in the positive charge, no depolarization. Finally your muscles will be paralyzed. Muscle tone will become 0. Because already we studied there has to be a certain muscle tone if you are not doing anything. Also to get the muscle tone, also few quantities of acetylcholine has to bind. There has to be a depolarization all the time. And you remember, then this depolarization will be followed by the repolarization. In case of the neuromuscular junction we studied. In case of this neurohumoral transmission we studied. Now what will happen? Suppose this one is a muscle. Consider efflux of potassium will be there. Efflux of potassium. That means what? The positive charge is getting decreased. Positive charge is getting decreased means it is seen as the repolarization. Slowly the muscle will be relaxed. And why it is happening? Because already we know acetylcholine can bind here. Again it will be dissociated. It will be hydrolyzed by the true acetylcholine esterase. We studied already. And again new acetylcholine will come and bind here. I mean, for the activation of your skeletal muscle, there has to be an on-off system. Depolarization, repolarization. Okay. Now what will happen? Sodium is supposed to be outside. Potassium is supposed to be inside. Now what is the second mechanism? We studied already. Sodium, potassium. Can you remember? Sodium, potassium, ATPase. Sodium, potassium, ATPase enzyme. It will make the sodium and potassium to revert their original positions. Sodium will be outside, potassium will be inside, and again new acetylcholine will bind here. New cycle will continue. Okay. Sodium, there has to be on-off system. All the neurotransmitters are working this way. Because if the acetylcholine keep on binding with the NM receptor for a longer period of time, what will happen? There will be excess depolarization. So this is not possible. So in this case, what we are saying, we are blocking the acetylcholine to bind with the NM receptor by means of this drugs. That means non-depolarizing blockers. This is the mechanism of action. The muscle will be relaxed now. So all right. So one more thing. These non-depolarizing blockers are said as the competitive blockers. Competitive blockers. We studied competitive, non-competitive antagonism. Same concept applied here. Why? Because you see, this is the place for binding receptor. Yeah? Acetylcholine is also competing here, and D-tubocurarine also competing here. Acetylcholine is also competing here, as well as D-tubocurarine also competing for the same site. Now, if the D-tubocurarine quantity is more, it will bind here. Now, if the acetylcholine quantity is more, then it will try to bind here. Okay? So this kind of antagonism can be reversed. I mean, the binding of T-tubocurarine with the NM receptor can be reversed by increase in the acetylcholine concentration in that neuromuscular junction. We have to increase the acetylcholine concentration. Now the question mark is how? Because whatever acetylcholine will be there, okay, it will be automatically hydrolyzed by the through acetylcholinesterase enzymes. Okay, so here we have to block the acetylcholinesterase enzyme. So what we have? Anticholinesterase drugs, neostigmine. Can you remember, in case of the therapeutic use of neostigmine, we have written to revert the toxicity of D-tubocurarine. Can you remember there? We already have studied. Now, if we give like neostigmine or this kind of anticholinesterase drugs, what it will do? It will increase the acetylcholine concentration on the neuromuscular junction. So more acetylcholine will be there. That means it will replace the D-tubocurarine and it will bind here. So certain characteristic about this non-depolarizing blockers, right? So it is a quaternary ammonium compounds. So it is polar. Polar means it will be dissolved in water but not in oils. Hence these are polar. It cannot cross the blood-brain barrier, BBB, as well as it cannot cross the placental barrier also. That is why CNS side effects are somewhat less, and it is very helpful for the seizure in cases where surgery needs to be performed. So the pharmacological actions of non-depolarizing blockers. First, it will cause the skeletal muscle paralysis. We know this one. Okay, as a neuromuscular blocking drugs, definitely it will cause the skeletal muscle paralysis. That means from normal tone to the zero. Second, what it can do, it can release the histamine. All the non-depolarizing blockers, it can release histamine. Okay, some are in a higher extent, some are in a lesser extent. Getting my points? That is why it can cause the bronchospasm, bronchoconstriction it can cause. Okay, the bronchoconstriction is not by means of any other mechanisms, by means of only the histamine released. Okay, next, some drugs can cause the ganglionic blockade. That means it can block the NN receptors also, more or less, except pancuronium and pipecuronium. This pancuronium and pipecuronium both are steroidal drugs coming under the category of non-depolarizing blockers. Both the drugs do not show any kind of ganglionic blockade, but the other drugs they are showing. But this pancuronium, I'm telling you, this pancuronium is having a vagolytic action. That means it can block the M2 receptor of the heart. That is why there is a tachycardia. Okay, M2 receptor activation decrease all the cardiac activities, blockade increase all the cardiac activities. So I am saying here as a tachycardia. Again, these drugs can cause hypotension, not by means of any other mechanisms, maybe by means of this histamine release as well as this ganglionic blockade. Histamine release and ganglionic blockade can cause the hypotension partially, right? And already I have mentioned you how there is a reversal of this kind of blockade with the help of neostigmine and it's called pyridostigmine. Okay, so this kind of reversal of blockade is very necessary if somebody is using the long acting neuromuscular blocking drugs. For short acting it's not like required. Short acting means for it to act for a short period of time. For longer acting drugs definitely it is required. All right, now coming to the adverse effect of this kind of non-depolarizing blockers. First thing we'll find hypoxia and respiratory paralysis. Okay, as the muscles are relaxed, there may be problem in breathing also. So it can lead to the hypoxia as well as, if it is again exceed, it can cause the respiratory paralysis because the intercostal muscles are also involved. It will cause the respiratory paralysis. So we must understand one thing here. In case of this skeletal muscle relaxants, the fast moving muscles, okay, the small muscles of your face, maybe eyelids, okay, then we have toes, larynx, these are paralyzed first. Then comes to the limbs, maybe of your hand and feet. Finally, that intercostal muscle as well as the diaphragm will be paralyzed. So, to cure this kind of hypoxia and respiratory paralysis, which may be because of the excess of this kind of non-depolarizing blockers, so already we studied what we have to give. We have to give the neostigmine, right? We have to give the neostigmine, anticholinesterase drug, which will block the acetylcholinesterase enzyme, and it will increase the concentration of acetylcholine in the neuromuscular junctions. Competitive blockers. But you know, if there is a neostigmine, if you apply the neostigmine, it can lead to the masquerading actions. Okay, it can lead to the masquerading actions. Remember, it can lead to the masquerading actions. Now, if there is a masquerading actions, it can lead to hypotension. It can lead to bronchospasm, bronchoconstriction. It can lead to constipation also. And acetylcholine can cause constipation. Sorry, I'm just telling you ulta. This constipation is not because of this acetylcholine. It will be because of this histamine. Now it can cause bradycardia. Right? It can cause bradycardia. Now this hypotension and bronchospasm can be also by means of this histamine. By observing this kind of effects, if there is a hypoxia and respiratory paralysis, so some other drugs are also injected. What are the drugs I am telling you? First thing, neostigmine have to be given. Neostigmine have to be given. So along with the neostigmine, what we can give? We can give adrenaline. It will look after this hypotension as well as bradycardia. We can give antihistaminic drugs. I'm not writing here. Antihistaminic drugs to block the histamine. Okay? Because this kind of non-depolarizing blockers can activate the histamine release. Right? Along with it, atropine is also given to block this kind of muscarinic actions. Atropine is an anticholinergic drug. Understood? Okay. So what is the ADR of non-depolarizing blockers? All the things we can write. You can write hypoxia, respiratory paralysis, hypotension, bronchospasm, constipation, as well as bradycardia. Now have a look on certain drug-drug interactions of non-depolarizing blockers along with the other drugs. Okay. Aminoglycoside and tetracycline. These are the two groups of antibiotics. Aminoglycoside we have streptomycin, gentamicin, neomycin. Okay, all the mycin, as well as the tetracycline group of antibiotics. Both the group of antibiotics can partially lead to the neuromuscular blockade action by decrease in the acetylcholine release. Partially it can block the neuromuscular blocking action. So if it is given along with that neuromuscular blocking drugs, what will happen? There is a synergistic action. Effect will be more. Already we studied what is synergistic actions. Same way, local anesthetic can also do the synergistic actions. Same way, myasthenia gravis. If the patient is suffering from myasthenia gravis, we'll study what is that exactly, but already we have discussed what is myasthenia gravis. Then also it will facilitate the blocking actions. That means this disease can also act as a synergistic actions. So the next class of drugs we have this depolarizing blockers. Only one drug we have that is in clinical use, succinylcholine. Okay, succinylcholine, and we have to understand the mechanism of action very nicely. Bit confusing, not exactly confusing, but you have to understand. You see, the succinylcholine, I'm writing here S. It is a kind of acetylcholine, but there is an advantage. What is the advantage? This succinylcholine are not degraded by or hydrolyzed by the true acetylcholinesterase. Previously we studied acetylcholinesterase can be of two types. One is the true, second one is the pseudo. Okay, it can only be degraded by this pseudo acetylcholinesterase, which is found in the blood plasma or liver. But in that synaptic cleft, true acetylcholinesterase are available. So this true acetylcholinesterase cannot degrade the succinylcholine. Okay, so in general what will happen after administration of the drugs, as this one is degraded by pseudo acetylcholinesterase, so whatever dose you have given, only a small quantity will reach here in the synaptic cleft. After reaching, it can bind with the NM receptors because it is same as that of acetylcholine. What it will do, it will cause the depolarization. It will cause the depolarization because of this influx of sodium. I am just writing here, because of this influx of sodium, depolarization will be there. Okay. Then again, muscle contraction will be there similarly, right? So in another receptors, acetylcholine will also bind. It can also cause depolarization. And most importantly, whatever succinylcholine will be coming out of the receptor, it cannot be degraded. Again, it will go and bind with the receptors. So it can act as an excess of acetylcholine in that neuromuscular junctions. Okay. So one thing we have to remember, after depolarization, there has to be a repolarization. That means whenever the sodium channel will enter After that it has to go out. Okay, potassium channel, whatever the sodium channel will be entering, it will cause positive increase in the positive charge. There has to be a decrease in the positive charge by movement of efflux of potassium channel. This is what we call as repolarization. Depolarization have to be followed by repolarization, then only a new cycle can be activated. Okay, so already I mentioned there has to be a switch on off phenomena, on off on off on off on off phenomena, then only muscle can work properly. Okay, if we keep something on for a longer period of time, at one time what will happen, the things will be damaged. Okay, the things will be damaged. So in this case what is happening, because of acetylcholine along with the succinylcholine, it is doing the persistent depolarization. There is no repolarization phase. Why this repolarization will be there? Whenever the acetylcholine will be detached from the receptor, it will be detached from the receptor and it is degraded. One new acetylcholine will form and it will bind here. Again detach, degraded. New acetylcholine, release, bind, okay, contraction, detach, degraded. Switch on off on off on off phenomena. But although the acetylcholines are degraded, but this, succinylcholine cannot be degraded, so it will keep on binding there for a longer period of time. So there is a persistent depolarization. That means if the muscle contraction is there, it will be contracted for the longer period of time. At one time will arise when it will go for paralysis. Getting my point? This is the phase 1 of this kind of blockade. Now after abhi maan lo, by any means, suppose the quantities of acetylcholine and the succinylcholine is decreased by any means, then also the muscle cannot go for further depolarization. Why? Because so many agonists, if it is binding with the receptor, there is a receptor desensitization. The receptor will try to hide. That means very less receptors will be available for binding, and these receptors cannot go for muscle contraction. This is what we call as phase 2 block. So in case of the blockade by the depolarizing blockers, initially there is a phase 1 block. What is phase 1 block? There is excess binding of acetylcholine along with the succinylcholine, so that there is a persistent depolarization. When we got a very good dialogue, I think we got a dialogue from this movie that is called as Americom. I told you before also, किसी को इतना भी मत डराओ कि वो डरना ही भूल जाए, right? So I can resemble the same concept out here. किसी को इतना भी एक्टिवेट मत करो कि वो एक्टिवेट होना ही भूल जाए. ठीक है? The same concept. Persistent depolarization. It can lead to the muscle fasciculation. Twisting of muscles will be there. Okay, finally the muscles will be paralyzed. Okay, I think you are getting my points. The muscles contraction is activating in such a limit where it will go for paralysis. Okay, for example, if you are doing very hard exercise all the time, okay, for the whole day you are doing hard exercise, at one time you will find you will be falling down. Even you won't have any energy to rise up. Even you won't have any energy to work. Same concept can be applied here. All right, so coming to this ADR, finally we have hyperkalemia. That means increase in the potassium concentration in the blood. These things can happen. Next, malignant hyperthermia, increase in the temperature of your body, right? As well as muscle soreness. Due to the muscle fasciculation, the muscle can be damaged. It is what to say as a muscle soreness. All right, so the overall use of this skeletal muscle relaxants already you have studied. Intubation, endotracheal tube in case of the surgery, right? Adjuvant to the anesthesia, It is used in case of this mechanical ventilations. Okay, in certain conditions like status epilepticus, excess form of epilepsy. Okay, where the muscles are getting very rigid, very contracted, high tension of the muscles. In this case also this kind of muscle relaxants can be used. Okay, it can also be used to prevent the trauma in case of this electroconvulsive therapy. What is electroconvulsive therapy? Just type there in Google, you'll come to know. All right, okay, that's for today. So today what we have studied only the peripherally acting skeletal muscle relaxants or neuromuscular blocking agents, right? So later on we'll be studying the centrally acting neuromuscular blocking agents. Thank you for watching.